So I wanted to take a glimpse into the future with you guys into 2023, knowing the coaching hierarchy here in Dallas, how things could go about if everything falls apart. We know about the already pre-existing conditions surrounding Mike McCarthy, about the expectations that ownership has with him, and he isn't really tied at the hip with those guys. But with a recent interview, or rather press conference, with Dan Quinn, as many of the other coordinators had conferences as well, he had some interesting comments that really spoke to me because it kind of signals that I think the Dallas Cowboys have their head coach in waiting and he's already on roster. So we'll talk about that in today's video. But before we begin, if you can like this video, doesn't take too long to do, less than a second, and it helps to perform better than the algorithm, so thank you for that. Subscribe. If you're a part of that 65 percentile that are not subscribed, hit the big red button. And also, if you don't want to miss out, hit that notification bell. Now, what exactly was said by Dan Quinn and what repercussions could happen and understanding this timeline of events? So, in the recent interview slash press conference, Quinn told Jory Epstein of USA Today that there will be a time when I'm definitely interested in being a head coach for the second time, but wasn't quite ready to take that next step this year. Quinn said he felt there was a lot to accomplish with the Cowboys defense, and many others have noted that he could have a chance to move one step up the ladder in Dallas should Cowboys owner Jerry Jones decide to let Mike McCarthy go. The prospect could be a reason for tension between the two men, but McCarthy has dismissed that idea. Quinn recounted a conversation with McCarthy that saw him offer to step aside if his presence made the current head coach uncomfortable. Quinn said the following: I was like, hey man, let's talk about it and see what you think. Quinn said, if it's easier for me to go, just say the word and I'm gone. Then he kind of laughed and said, if this was 10 years ago, I'd say, yeah, it would help for you to go, but I don't want to say that right now because I think winning is better with you here. So he then went on to say none of that is likely to squash speculation about McCarthy's future should the Cowboys get off to a slow start, and Quinn did note that the lessons learned from his time as the Falcons head coach leaves him able to hit the ground running with a faster start when he does get a second chance in a top job. Now, this is important because of how things transpired at the end of last season, where Dan Quinn had plenty of offers to go elsewhere. He elected not to. And then you hear the comments from Jerry talking about Dan Quinn, this, that, and a third. And then Mike McCarthy kind of having to navigate that minefield. And it really tells me that we now know who's the head coach in waiting. And this is something that the Joneses usually have done. When you had a Wade Phillips-like coach in, that whole, fiasco with now Jason Garrett replacing him. Now, this is a different situation because you do have a former head coach who's been there, done that before. There is, of course, the Jason Garrett model there with Kellen Moore. But all things considered, the fact that the guy interviewed for all these positions, and if he's this hot commodity, he should have been hired, but he wasn't. Dan Quinn, being in Dallas, tells me that if Mike McCarthy is canned, he's got the job. It's not even a question about it because of the fact of how things are laid out here. Jerry likes him. He's got the experience, and I don't think that the Cowboys want to lose Dan Quinn knowing his impact on the defensive side of the ball. But the main thing, and I want to add this, is if you promote Dan Quinn, which I don't have a problem with per se, especially if the players respond well to him, and on top of that, he has a plan in place. My problem is that we've seen what he can do in Atlanta, albeit under different ownership, but it's going to take his focus away from the defense, and then we're going to have to see another defensive coordinator come in. Then we're going to have to see possibly a new offensive coordinator come in, which I guess makes sense if you go about it that way. But I want to just make this clear. If Mike McCarthy gets fired this year, and it's for the right reasons. Not like we went to the playoffs again, we lost in the second round and he gets canned on some BS. If we legitimately have a problem and he's gone and Dan Quinn gets stuck with having to keep the same guys around, I'm not going to like that. I am a huge proponent of head coaches deciding the staff they want. If Kellen Moore has to be attached to the hip with Dan Quinn, that's going to be a problem for me because that's not a recipe for success. Now, if Dan Quinn himself elects to keep Kellen Moore, okay, that's fine. You know, your quarterback likes him, and I think that as long as he has the personnel and he kind of has that right ear in his head, I think he's fine. But that's right now Mike McCarthy's job. And for Dan Quinn, yes, he's a very qualified individual. I think he will be a head coach again. And this is where I will tell people this. If Dan Quinn gets more head coaching looks, there could be a possibility that the Cowboys just, like they did with Jason Garrett, they dump a Wade Phillips to promote him because they're afraid they're going to lose him. And, that's okay, again, if, again, things fall in the right path. Right now, we are way far away from that, but it's okay to have these conversations for when they resurface, because if the Cowboys start to not do well, which, given the circumstances, that could be the case. Again, I'm not hoping that, and I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong. If Mike McCarthy gets canned and Dan Quinn is the interim head coach, don't even think about the Cowboys going after anybody else. Dan Quinn's the guy. And then we just start over and go from there. But this is huge. And Mike McCarthy has a lot of pressure, and whether he wants to admit it or just blow it off, there is a pressure there. Is there tension between the two guys? Probably not, because they understand the circumstances. It's Dallas. Everyone's going to talk about it. But, again, if Dan Quinn is there and Mike McCarthy gets canned, there is no reason to think anybody else. Unless Kellen Moore gets the job and we all just die because we are going back into the whole Kellen Moore path of things. And I always really felt that Mike McCarthy, honest to God, is going to be the next Wade Phillips. And when I say that, it's not that Mike's a terrible coach. I didn't think Wade was a terrible coach. I just think the problem is that it's the placeholder mindset. Like, okay, you just hired him because he has the most experience and you're just hoping that the next guy is going to step in and be A-okay. But if Mike McCarthy fails again, it has nothing to do with that guy. And I want everybody to understand that. Mike McCarthy has been set up to fail by the front office. I know you hate it when I had to talk about it, but it's true. Mike McCarthy has been set up to fail. If he has any remote success with this team, with what he's been implementing, he does not deserve to lose his job. And I hope the Cowboys understand that. But if they fire him and they set him up to fail just so they can promote Dan Quinn, that is, effed up. And also, you do have Sean Payton out there, but I mean, what do you want them to do? I want this team to go with the best option and have a good relationship that brings talent here. I don't see a reason to get rid of Mike McCarthy yet. We were in 2 seasons. Yes, we had a very disappointing end to the 2021 campaign, but that doesn't give us the excuse to be like, well, Mike McCarthy's a shitty head coach. Again, we have dealt with Jason Garrett for a long, long time, and it's going to take a long time for that culture to just go away. And we have another year, and the third year is the biggest because now that's when the culture of the new head coach kind of gets ingrained, and hopefully that leads to success. I believe that if Mike McCarthy wants to stay, get this team back to the postseason and win a playoff game, and you're A-okay in my book. That's not necessarily what I hope they go. That's my standard, but that is exactly what we need to see. Especially if Mike McCarthy goes to the NFC Championship game, and even if we lose, do you think that we need to can him at that point? We'll see what happens, guys, but that is what I have all to say here. If you reach the end of this video, you're a real MVP for doing that, and thank you for that. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on the way out. If you missed the last video, click right in the middle of the screen so you catch up and you don't miss any of my content. All right, guys? Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.